Hey guys, so I'm on here to share this first video. Now I have all these notes written down so I don't forget anything. So if you see me looking down, I'm looking at notes because this prego brain is no joke. um, so this first video that I felt led to share, we're gonna talk about talking about testimonies. I know that sounds kind of funny. So when I say this, I'm not talking about, the main testimony, oh, how did you come to Christ testimony, which although that's very important, and when we're called to share that, we absolutely should share that. What I'm talking about is there are multiple testimonies. So, for instance, I have a testimony about quitting smoking weed over a year ago. I have a testimony about quitting cursing. Well, it being my regular conversation, there have been some times where I've gotten really mad and caught myself cursing and had to immediately repent, like, oh, Lord. But you know what I mean? Like in a regular conversation, I was one of those people who enthusiastically cursed. I made all the guys I worked with look bad. I had just a horrible vocabulary and no spiritual understanding that it's just foul talk, what it invites in. So, but anyway, there's testimonies for every little thing that we're delivered from. And you can even share when you're in the midst of a testimony, when you're in the midst of being delivered from something. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because so many believers can get caught up in judging. And there's such a tight line when it comes to this because, yes, we are to judge the sin, but not the sinner. And that can get really tricky. And also being in the flesh and having just, emotions that we have to deal with. And we have to take our thoughts captive and we have to seek walking in the spirit. So there's that enmity between the flesh and the spirit. There's that battle, that constant dependency on the Lord of having to call out to him daily through things. So because of that, it can be difficult. However, it's so important. And I'm going to give some examples. So, as a lot of you guys know, from the time I was 7 till 3-4 years ago now, I don't know, I'm really bad with time. I was Catholic. And I was brought out of the Catholic Church. The Lord led me out when I asked to get closer to him and asked him to reveal truths to me and all kinds of stuff. He led me out. So when I was in the Catholic, and this is not just the Catholic Church, y'all, I've seen this all over with believers. But I'm just giving an example of what I grew up seeing. I grew up seeing a lot of judgment. I grew up seeing people that were very close to me in my life who were main influences in my growth and development, and they were, they called themselves believers, and but I didn't see a lot of fruit. I saw that their lives became more religious, but I didn't see a lot of renewal of the mind and transformation. There was some, but a lot of things were kind of still the same. It's like, although they didn't act, they didn't participate in certain things, but the behavior and the heart and the perspectives and the negativity was kind of still there. And so what became of that is I would see these people kind of, change their life over. Maybe they weren't partying like before, sleeping around as much, cussing as much, so on and so forth. However, there was uh there was still this bitterness at heart. It was like going from one extreme to the other. And there was this when they saw anyone doing things that they're like, oh, that's a sin, that's evil, that's this, that's that. uh, there was such a harsh judgment and a disgust. And I remember like watching these things and I would get so upset, and I remember these things felt wrong in my spirit, but I was a kid, like no one was going to listen to me. And even if I tried to talk, I probably would have gotten beaten for it. But and the people I was around, they're just absolutely so prideful. They couldn't even conceive of the thought of gaining any kind of information or wisdom from, a child. So there was no room for that really. But I remember seeing these things, and I remember things would always just like I would see these things. I'm like, this is so wrong. There's something so wrong, and I knew it in my spirit, and I'd hold on to these things. And I was a kid, I was still learning. There was not much that I really understood. I couldn't bring it fully all together. But I remember thinking to myself, like, like, do you not remember where you came from? And this is a key point. Remember where you came from. I know when you switch over and you're walking with the Lord, you almost want to forget a lot of those things. But these are the things that help save people. These are the things that help bring people to the Lord to be saved. And instead of picking at people and condemning them and like almost pushing them away like they're lepers or something because they're in sin. And now I'm not saying go and welcome them into your circle and become besties with them. That's not what I'm saying. So please don't go from one extreme to another. What I'm saying is it can be taken to such an extreme. And these people that are walking in these sins, a lot of them are things that we did before we came to Christ. And I know you might think to yourself, like, oh, I worked so hard to come out of that, away from that. I don't want to go anywhere near that. Did Jesus do that? Jesus didn't do that. And he's a lot more dang pure than we are. And so what I'm trying to get at here is this is an opportunity, okay? When you're freed from a bondage, to turn around and help free the person behind you. And whether it's a sin that you used to commit or it's a sin that you never committed and you're like, oh, I never did that. I don't like, that's just bad and I'm above that because that was never my sin of choice. Regardless of what it is, remember where you came from. Oh, Lord, humble us, please. Please, it's so painful and it just grieves my spirit ever since I was a kid, seeing other believers do this. And I just think to myself, gosh, there was an opportunity right there to share a testimony. And I've known other believers where I saw who they were before and I see them coming out of things now. And some they're still trapped in, but I see them coming out of things and they're on their high and mighty horse and they look down because they're disgusted with the sin. And I get it. I get the disgust with the sin, but the person, do you not remember what it's like to be in those chains? Do you not remember what it's like to go through that suffering of not knowing the truth? Because the only way to really be delivered from anything is to be given revelation. And so that's why it's so important to pray for deliverance and revelation, whether the Lord, does it through other people, directly, however he decides to send you that deliverance, through time, whatever. Revelation is a key part. And We can't neglect that. And so the whole point of becoming a believer, of being elevated through our journey with Jesus, is that we go and spread the gospel. We go and not just the gospel, but we share, hey, this is where I was. This is what happened when I met this God man, when I met Jesus, and this is where I am now. And it's all because of him. And this is how I went through this process. And maybe that process will help them. Maybe the prayers you prayed, maybe the way you sought out, maybe I don't know, but this, however it is for you, take that opportunity, because it's so important. And don't forget where you came from. Because what a tragedy. Imagine coming to the end of your life and standing before God, and God showing you all the people you could have helped, but you were too busy trying to seclude yourself. You were too busy on your high horse. You were too busy like, don't touch me, you know? Jesus went down into the pit with the lepers. He went down to the table with the sinners. And though he did not sin with them, he went into the pit where they were, revealed the truth to them, and helped bring them out. We can plant the seeds, the Lord will send the water, and the outcome is in his hands. But what are you fearful of to not even try, to not do what we're called to do? This is what we're called to do as believers. What are you fearful of? Scorn? Are you afraid you're going to walk up to this sinner who's knee deep in the world and new aged and tell them, hey, I used to deal with this, or I used to deal with that, and you know what helped me? Jesus. You know how? This and that and the third. And then let's say they laugh at you. So what? Learn to laugh at yourself, I will say, because we're all ridiculous. I told someone that recently, and they weren't very thrilled about it. They were embarrassed, but I don't care, because that is another thing we need to work on, is praying to not have a heart that is easily offended. We are all absolutely ridiculous. Learn to laugh at yourself. So this is so important. It grieves me so much to the point where I get like knots in my stomach at the thought of it. And